And now the Israel aid is in limbo. And what about aid to Ukraine? Joining us live this morning, our Sunday political panel, Doug Osone is a Democratic strategist and CEO of the National Capital Strategy Group, and Horace Cooper is a Republican strategist and chair of Project 21. Punchbowl News said this past week that Mike Johnson is heading into a buzzsaw with all the different groups of people he has to keep happy, and also the fact that, oh, by the way, in 12 days, the government could shut down. Is Mike Johnson up to this job? Because up until he got elected Speaker, a lot of people didn't even know who he was.
Yeah, you really have to be careful what you wish for as far as the Republican caucus goes. It's really an untenable position given all the far right-wing Republicans that are in the caucus that don't care one way or another if the government shuts down, which is a no bueno for our military, U.S. military, and so many more of our services and government services in the country. So he really is in a tight position, and we know what Kevin McCarthy's go-to was to negotiate a deal with the Democrats to prevent a government shutdown. But Mike Johnson doesn't seem to have that card in his hand. So it's going to be really interesting over the next few weeks to see how this all plays out.
Well, you know, one of the things you have to be when you're Speaker of the House is a strategist. And if you want to notch your first big win, you probably want to have something to get through. What was the point of attaching IRS cuts to the Israeli aid bill?
I'm going to repeat the same thing, that you got to be careful what you wish for. Nancy Pelosi assured Kevin McCarthy that in the event that there was a vote to have him removed as Speaker, Democrats would step up. They didn't step up. And so now when they talk about the worry that they have over what ended up happening, they own some of that. Second point is that the military defense appropriations are very likely being worked on this very coming week, so that'll be taken off the table even if there ultimately is a shutdown. So this is not nearly the catastrophe that everyone has been suggesting.
I've heard our friends on the Republican side saying over and over again that this is somehow the Democrats' fault, Nancy Pelosi's fault. The call came from within the House of the Republican caucus, and that's what's causing the problems right now as to whether or not we're going to get this government funded. I mean, we're 12 days away. A lot of the same complaints that were lodged to Kevin McCarthy when the last CR went through remain now. Is Mike Johnson going to be able to stand up to that?
I'm just saying the caterwauling that I hear from the left is unhelpful in light of the fact that if they were really concerned about the issues that they raised, they could have done something about it. Now, with regard to this, as I have indicated, our new Speaker has sat down with Mitch McConnell, and they are in agreement that there is going to be, in principle, some sort of effort to push funding at least until January. Now, there are going to be some things like the IRS spending cuts. The equivalents of that are going to be included. Particularly, there may be a 2 or 3% cut in the next CR.
What McConnell and the House are not seeing eye to eye on the Republican side, though, right now is aid to Ukraine. McConnell wants that aid. He says that aid is needed, and that if the U.S. does not do that, it may embolden Russia and raise the possibility of the U.S. maybe having to get involved in an even larger way. Where is the Democratic Party at right now on aid to Ukraine?
Well, the Democrats are in full support of aid to Ukraine as a party, and I think it's important that we fund the Ukraine against our historically most prolific adversary of Russia, to send a message to China, to send a message to the rest of the world that we cannot have these type of countries coming in and invading sovereign nations on our watch. So it's important that we do that. Democratic vote is going to be behind it. And Chuck Schumer is the one that Mike Johnson needs to be talking to, the guy who leads the Senate, as opposed to Mitch McConnell.
If I could invoke a legendary name from the Republican Party, it's hard to imagine if Ronald Reagan were here right now that he would not be the first in line to talk about aid to Ukraine and stopping Russia. Why is there this? What's behind this faction in the House caucus right now that they're throwing up these roadblocks to Ukrainian aid?
There's been a serious failure in leadership on the part of the White House. It was Ronald Reagan who showed us how leadership worked and explained the importance of the national security priorities. This president has been abysmally poor at doing that, and as a consequence, it has made the vote on this a heavy lift. But let's be clear. The speaker, the incoming speaker, has said that he too is committed to having a floor vote on Ukraine support. What is DOA is the president's omnibus national security bill that includes Hamas funding, that includes Gaza funding, that includes
Hamas funding?
We've been funding Hamas. We've been funding Hamas as the federal government taxpayer for some time.
Could you explain that?
We give support to the organizations that are in charge in Gaza. And Hamas has been one of those. And so we have been providing funding for, 5, 10, 15 years. It's a bipartisan thing. My point about this is his proposal, when you look at it, it continues that.
Let me ask you about what's been going on recently in the last couple of days in the Democratic Party and some of the voices that have been speaking out about the Israeli-Hamas war right now. There has been a growing, louder voice out of the Democratic side, especially from members of the Squad, against Israel's action, calling on Israel to pause right now. Does the Democratic leadership need to step up with a larger voice and make it clear where they stand on this war and what Israel was put through on October 7th?
Yeah, what's happening in Gaza right now is horrific. We've had some 9,500 Palestinians killed in Israel, over 75 UN aid workers. So we're seeing Israel come in with a very heavy hand, and we understand they have every right to defend themselves as a sovereign nation. However, we are seeing innocent civilians being killed. So it really has become an issue and quite the conundrum for Joe Biden and the Democratic Party to deal with.
We've got 30 seconds. There's a presidential date on the Republican side later on this week. Real quick, give me a name of somebody who you should keep an eye on in this next debate.
In the next debate, keep your eye on Nikki Haley. She is now the establishment favored. We'll see how she does in the debate.
I think you should keep an eye on Chris Christie. He makes the most sense for Republicans in terms of the one person that may have a shot against Joe Biden if you were able to
New
get
Jersey governor got a little rumbly with the Floridians over the weekend, too. We thank you so much. Douglas Sloan, Horace Cooper, pleasure to have you. We'll have you back real soon.